Where do you see real estate and the Paraguayan market 5 years from today?
I think it will continue to grow exponentially.
And so just to zoom out a little bit and go over the whole process, what would you say are the basic steps from, beginning to end in regards to buying property in Paraguay? Hey everyone, this is Paul from Plan B Paraguay. In the comments on our YouTube video and our Twitter, we're getting a lot of people asking questions about real estate in Paraguay. So we thought, what better than to go to an expert in Paraguay and get, the answers from the source. So today we have Laura from View Real Estate in Paraguay. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi Paul, thank you for having me.
Laura, before we begin, obviously our audience wants to know a little bit about you and your backstory. So how did you get started in real estate?
Well, I started in 2008 working at the American Embassy. I worked at the housing department doing real estate for the diplomats. I was in charge of negotiating their contracts, property management, and making sure that they have a nice stay in Paraguay. After a while, I decided to go independently, and I founded View because I thought that the market needed this service. I was focusing on social media, on aesthetics, making sure that the pictures that people saw of our houses were the best possible. I started at a time where real estate was shifting in Paraguay. So I've been running View for 10 years now. We have 15 agents and we're doing selling, renting, and property management.
Awesome. So it sounds like we're talking to a real expert today then.
Thank you.
So Laura, what would you say makes Paraguayan real estate attractive to foreigners?
Paraguay have a unique combination of quality of life, low taxes. Investing in living can be really interesting. It's also a green capital, and with the new grade of certification, Paraguay makes a unique place for foreigners. You can live here with little money, and prices are much more affordable than in the US and Europe.
So Laura, how would you say that investing in Paraguay is different from, what our clients are used to? They're used to Europe, they're used to maybe North America. How is Paraguay different?
Well, land prices are much more affordable here than in the US and Europe, and there are also no main barriers for foreigners to come here and buy property or invest. The market in Paraguay is growing. It's easy to buy property with no restrictions. Also, Paraguayan hospitality is amazing. I've worked with different executives and diplomats, and they ended up falling in love with Paraguay and their culture, just like Cameron did a couple of years ago when he came and bought a house.
So what advice would you give to someone coming here to invest in real estate in, Asuncion or maybe the surrounding areas as well?
Well, I recommend to seek specialists in every area, especially in legally and real estate. And also don't rush. I recommend people to come to Asuncion and live the experience, go to every neighborhood, understand how Paraguayans live, and make sure where they put their money.
You mentioned that Paraguay is very open and it's quite easy for foreigners to come here and buy real estate and invest. Even people without the cedula and the residency. Would you say that local sellers are more comfortable dealing with someone, with a cedula, they're in the system, than they are with someone that maybe just rocks up with, say, a Canadian or a US passport trying to buy a house?
Definitely. I think that having a cedula or the proper documents requires less paperwork for people to buy a property in Paraguay. And it also gives time for foreigners to understand our local cultures. Having the cedula and the paperwork give us a sense of trust. So it's easy for us to work with someone that has their documents ready. And also paperwork is less extensive.
So what would you recommend, someone comes here, they're trying to pick a real estate agent or they're trying to pick a firm. What things should they look for to make sure they're getting a good real estate agent to help them with their property buying process?
Well, there's the National Association of Real Estate here. Actually, I'm a vice president currently. And make sure to work with someone from that association.
I think you actually made a good point, because what we've noticed here is, it's great that Paraguay is so free and all that, but it seems like here, anyone can call themselves a real estate agent. I remember I was in an Uber, one day, and the Uber driver was also a real estate agent. So I think it's important, like you said, to have this this authorizing body to make sure that the real estate agent that you do work with is following those standards and is a professional.
The National Association of Real Estate, in Spanish, is called La Asociación de Corredores Inmobiliarios del Paraguay, ASIP. I can leave the contact later.
Okay.
And I would recommend to work with someone from that organization. The ASIP is the closest that we have now regulating the real estate market. In the ASIP now we have around 80 real estate companies working and also independent people working there. I would recommend to choose one of them. If not, make sure that the real estate agent have a proper website, a proper social media.
So I would say it can be quite intimidating for one of our clients to come here and reach out to a real estate agent immediately. If people just wanted to look online just to get a feel of what properties available, or is there some websites, or how would you recommend people just do their very initial research when they're looking into buying a property here?
Well, most agents or companies have their databases on their website or in their social media. Like you can look in every agent's webpage or social media, because here multiple agencies can have the same listing. Again, we recommend for foreigners to live in Asunción for a while and understand the market and understand the locals before making a decision of purchasing. We also have our website, but locals for now prefer Instagram. Actually, they like to see on Instagram what's new and what properties we have, but then again, they prefer to talk to an agent and go through WhatsApp and ask the agent to start sending everything through WhatsApp.
That's interesting. So you're saying that in general, Paraguayan people actually prefer to look for their houses through Instagram rather than like a particular property website?
Yes, for now I think that for me and many colleagues, we realize that social media is very important in real estate. As I said before, since different companies can list the same property, is the service what makes us unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point as well, guys, what Laura is saying. Notice she said WhatsApp, right? So I know a lot of people in different parts of the world, maybe they're not familiar with using WhatsApp, but the truth is in Paraguay, whether it's real estate or a dinner reservation or going to your barber or talking to your lawyer, it's all through WhatsApp. So if you aren't familiar with that app, I definitely recommend downloading it before you come to Paraguay. Laura, it's funny that you mentioned, the Instagram's the main platform, because what I noticed, I came here with the mentality of looking for properties in Australia. And in Australia, there's like big real estate websites that aggregate all the properties. Now I know Paraguay has a website called infocasas.com. But what I noticed on Infocasas is that a lot of the listings can sort of be out of date or expired. So you might like a property only to find that it's no longer on the market. So based on what you're saying, Instagram is probably one of the places where you get, the most recent listings. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've used Infocasas as well, and it's a different channel where we put our properties. But I believe that Instagram is the most updated channel for every agency, because we like to keep our Instagram entertaining, and the latest properties are always in our stories or our page.
And so we have some people that want to buy some property and they want as an investment. Yeah, they want someone to worry about it, someone to look after it. They just want it there in the background. Is that something that's possible or easy to do with real estate in Paraguay?
Yes, it actually happens. I mean, there are some people that just want to put their money in some land and just leave it there and make it grow and probably sell it again like in 10 years. There's also people that wants to buy something and then rent it through Airbnb or just have some rental income. There are people that wants to form a family here, like you guys. And they just buy a place and find a place where to live and spend the rest of their lives. So if people want to buy property and then rent through Airbnb, there are also companies that are specializing in that area since the demand is growing.
So you mentioned Airbnb there. Is there also I guess, longer leases?
Actually, the standard lease here is normally for 6 months. It's the minimum that most landlords require, except for from Airbnb. So yeah, there are people that want to buy for Airbnb, and there are specialized agencies that work Airbnb and manage those type of properties. And there are also long-term leases, 6 months to 2 years leases, and we do that as well.
So you mentioned 6 months to 2 years. What is the average lease here that landlords would expect from a tenant?
They will be happy with having someone from 1 year and then renovate the lease again. The longer that they will accept, it's normally 5 years.
How does the guarantee or the security deposit work in Paraguay? Because I know it's probably a bit different. In Australia, the security deposit goes to a different part of the government. Who looks after the security deposit in Paraguay? Does the landlord look after it, or another party, or how does that work?
Yes, in rental, the security deposit called garantía goes straight to the landlord.
Okay.
And afterwards, when the lease is finished, the landlord is supposed to give back to the tenant if the property is in the right condition.
One, I guess, horror story I've heard about Argentina versus Paraguay, and maybe you can tell me if this is real or not. They say in Argentina, you can go on holidays, and if someone just starts squatting in your house, in your empty house while you're away, it's very difficult to remove that person from your property. Does Paraguay have the same sort of issue here, or?
No, we don't have that sort of issue. Like in Asunción, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because actually it doesn't happen there. So in Asunción, it doesn't happen. Maybe in rural areas, but if it does, the police is allowed to kick them out.
Right. It's important. It's your house.
Yeah, but it actually is not part of our culture, especially in our capital.
Now, let's talk about land, because I know that's a very attractive investment to people. A lot of people like the idea of buying some land in Paraguay and not having to worry about it and just have it appreciate in value over time. Do you have any tips or advice for people that want to look into investing in land in Paraguay?
Yes, well, Asunción is getting crowded and the prices are going up, and we have a lot of buildings around us now. And we can see Luque, for example, that is a city next to Asunción, close to Asunción. I think that in the next 5 or 10 years, it will provide an exponential growth.
Okay, so that's good. So we mentioned Luque as one of the cities that are close to Asunción that you think is going to grow. Do you think, what would you say is even the next city that's probably looking to modernize and grow and get popular after Luque? Just so our viewers have the hot tip.
So you have Luque, you have Fernando de la Mora, you have Mariano Roque Alonso. They are all cities close to Asunción, where you can see gated neighborhoods and new developments growing week by week. The distance is like 10 or 20 minutes away from downtown,
yeah.
But the price, it can be like half the price of a one-bedroom apartment. Like in Fernando de la Mora, you can have a one-bedroom apartment for $70,000 or $100,000, and the same apartment in Asunción in a neighborhood like Buruguyá may cost like $180,000 or $200,000.
And that's very interesting for us, because I come from a big city, Melbourne in Australia, and it can be an hour and a half drive just from one side of the city to the other. So the fact that a 15, 20-minute drive, like you said, and you're in a whole different city and the prices of the housing is much cheaper, I think it really shows just with Asunción now, how easy it is still to get around. There's not a lot of traffic. And if you want, you can buy a house a little bit further out for a much better price, but still have all the places you want to be close by. Would you agree?
Yeah, for us locals, 20-minute drives is a lot because, it's because of the exponential growth Asunción and Paraguay had in the last 15 to 20 years, But definitely for foreigners, I can see when I talk to them that 20 or 40 minutes is actually very familiar to drive, and the prices can differ a lot.
Absolutely. In Plan B, we manage paddle, right? So we have a paddle group, we meet every week, and we just moved 5 minutes more drive further out for where we play paddle. and all my friends are complaining, you know, the Uber ride is 10 minutes now. It's so spoiled living in Asuncion. I think that's like a huge
They're
distance.
getting local, so
Right, yeah, yeah.
they're getting the Paraguayan vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like in Paraguayan culture, Paraguayan people really like a house. You know, they like to have a house so they can have an asado on the weekend. Whereas more perhaps, you know, people that move to Paraguay like me, we prefer apartments. Maybe we used to live in a bigger city. Would you agree that tends to be true, or?
Yeah, well, that used to be like that way. Actually, we can see that like 15 years ago, it started shifting, and traditional families started moving to an apartment, or people tend to move to an apartment, and it was a time where it's actually is like the other way. Like foreigners come here and they want to get the house because they know that they can get a big house with a pool and you know, a big garden for a price that it would be impossible in other countries.
Yeah.
And Paraguayans are starting to learn how to live in apartments and in smaller places.
So there's a lot of developments,
Yeah.
as you know. There's a lot of high rise popping up. How do people know? How can people tell? You know, this is a good developer versus I should be a bit more wary of this developer.
Well, first of all, have a good real estate agent to guide you in that process. But by the other hand, developers now have done a lot of projects. We have a lot of developers from Argentina, so you're going to be able to take a look of what they've done before. So if you want to buy from one developer, you can go to their first projects and visit the quality. So it's easy for you with a good real estate agent, go and visit every developer and see what options they have.
I think that's really good advice, and it's similar to what I heard. And they said like every development, you know, they do in Paraguay, that you can see if there's a lot of mistakes on their previous work, it's likely to be like that in future. But if the previous developments have quality, have a good reputation, you know, it's more likely for that developer to also deliver that if you were to invest in a property with them.
Yes, definitely. I work with developers that they keep like making the projects better, and in terms of amenities and in terms of building construction quality. And also there are new actors and new players that offer good products. So again, I recommend you go with a specialist and take your time to understand Paraguayan culture, understand Asuncion and surroundings, and then visit all the developers. So if you buy in Pozo, you can get a property like 20 or 30% cheaper than once it's finished.
And so imposo means off the plan?
Exactly.
Okay. And with that, right, because I think about, you know, what is the risks involved? Like, is there a certain percentage where people invest in Pozo and it doesn't materialize, or can you speak to that at all?
Again, if you use a trustworthy real estate agent and developer, there are no major risks in putting an upfront of 20% of what the property costs, and then you fraction the payments, or you negotiate that with every developer.
And in doing that, what's the usual length of time that someone would be, you know, paying?
They normally request to cancel the debt when the property is finished, or when you receive your apartment or your house. And that time, the building time, it's for apartments, it's normally 24 months.
So going back to before to what you said, let's say I'm someone who's interested in real estate in Paraguay. I'm on the Instagram. I see the price of an apartment that looks very attractive. Let's say it's $70,000. It's quoted there. Is there any other costs that an investor or a buyer is likely or has to pay besides the price that's quoted or listed?
What's interesting here is that buyers don't pay a commission to real estate normally.
Okay.
Only the seller pays the commission to a real estate. In renting a house, yes, both parties have to pay the commission, but in buying, the buyer doesn't pay. There are some legal costs if you work with a representative. There might be some legal costs, but they're minimum if you work with a representative or with a lawyer. And also the escrow, it's normally shared 50% with the buyer and seller.
In regards to other costs, I actually had a phone call with a client yesterday. He was living in New York, right?
Okay.
And he said his property taxes are $12,000 a year. So can you speak a little bit about roughly what the property taxes are in Paraguay?
So in Asunción, taxes can be a little bit more expensive for Paraguayans, but it will be like $500 a year, probably a little bit more or less, which I think that for foreigners, that's really accessible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's far less. And so just to zoom out a little bit and go over the whole process, what would you say are the basic steps from beginning to end in regards to buying property in Paraguay?
Well, once you pick your property, so the first thing you should know is important to choose the real estate agent that you're going to work with, because you can negotiate the same property with a different agent. So pick your agent. The seller will request a minimum of 10% to lock the property. So then the escrow will revise the documents and to see that the property is ready to be transferred. And normally the buyer gets to choose which escrow to work with. You get the preference and you can get like an estimate before you decide who to work with. And once the paperwork or the documents are ready to go, the escrow start working in the transference. It may last like 40 to 60 days for the title to be ready, and then you cancel the property and you have land in Paraguay. When you want to secure the property and you put an upfront payment of 10 or 20%, you sign a lease where you compromise to buy the property in the exact price that you negotiated. So afterwards, if you decide not to buy the property, you lose that money, that 10% or 20% that you put up front. And if the seller decides not to sell you the property, they must pay a fine, like 10% that you put up front plus a 10% in fine because he decided not to sell it to you and you lost your money in that period of time.
So it sounds then that you want to be very sure you have the money ready to complete the deal if you do, sign.
Absolutely. Don't sign yes, I recommend not to sign a lease of buying a property if you don't have the money ready, because you may lose that upfront payment if you don't complete your compromise in buying the property when the paperwork is done. If the seller decides to sell it to another person or not to sell the property at all, they have to give you back their money and also pay a fine of the same amount because of the wasted time. So you get back double your deposit for nothing.
So we were going through about a few of the costs involved for the different types of properties you can own. Now, you see some of these apartments, they got a pool, they got a gym, they got some guy fixing the lawn every single morning. Like, what is the usual fees involved in paying to maintain an apartment each year?
Well, it depends on the amenities of every building. The expenses, that's how we call it here.
Okay.
And it may involve security, because most buildings in Asunción have 24-hour security. A gardener that will maintain the green areas, the pool, and gym is also very demanded these days.
Yeah.
It can be like a regular building of apartments of 1 and 2 bedrooms can cost like $300 to $500 expenses. Common areas of a building have their costs monthly. Let's say everything in between security, gardener, gym, maintenance, pool costs 5 million guaranis in total. So that 5 million monthly that costs to maintain those areas will be divided. Okay. So if you have 10 units, 10 owners, you divide that into 10.
Right.
The amenities or the common areas, it's the same for everybody. You pay according to your square meters that you own. But if you have like 100 units in one building, 1 million guaranis is divided in 100. And if you have like 10 units, 1 million guarani that costs the gardener, it's divided in 10. So if you have more units in a building, the expense is less for each owner, because you divide the cost of all the amenities.
So it's usually cheaper per person the more units there are in an
Yeah.
apartment? Right, that makes sense.
But if you have an apartment with a lot of units, the expenses will be less. I have apartments which we do the property management that only has 12 units. So that's where the expenses monthly it's higher because
Right.
you have only 12 owners. But if you have a building where you have like 100 units, it's even if the amenities are more sophisticated or bigger areas, it may be less expensive per month because the cost is dissolved in the amount of units.
So in the 3 years that I've been here, it's been crazy just how much Asuncion has developed. You walk down the street, you go down Santa Teresa, it's new apartment buildings, new stores, new supermarkets. My question to you is, where do you see the Paraguayan real estate market in 5 years?
Well, the market will continue to grow exponentially. With the certification rate of investment, international money will begin to flow, and I think Paraguay will continue to grow exponentially in the future.
So we were talking about how much Paraguay is growing in the next 5 years. There's a lot of new developments. Is there a concern at all that could be an oversupply of apartments on the market, or are you finding they're all getting rented out?
There's a big demand regarding rental apartments, especially the units that have 1 and 2 bedroom. If they're in a good location and with the right pricing, you'll rent them right away. There's a real demand. Yeah, for rental. Yeah. If you want to rent, there's a need. Yeah, if you buy something, you're going to rent it right away.
Is that Airbnb, or is that the 6 to 12 month rental contract? Or?
Yes, definitely the Airbnb is growing, especially in the new corporate area near the World Trade Centers, but also long-term leases for 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom apartments are very in demand.
And if you would say, what sort of people are renting these apartments?
Well, in Paraguay, people used to get married and go from their parents' house to their new family house. And now that is shifting. People are getting independent and leaving their parents' house in a young age. And that only started to happen here a couple of years ago. So young people will be like the main segment, renting a 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom apartments. Also, young couples, newlyweds, and especially many expats that come to Paraguay to visit and to start living here. They also rent the 1 and 2 bedroom apartments.
So you mentioned a lot of Paraguayans, young people or young families are moving into these apartments. Also a lot of expats as well. I think at Plan B, when we think of expats, we're always thinking of, English-speaking people, right? From Canada, Australia, the US, because that's our clients. But is it English-speaking expats, or what countries are the majority of these expats coming from?
Yeah, they come from everywhere actually. Mainly if they come to work or invest and then leave the country, they come from Argentina or Brazil. Bolivians are coming also now. But if they come to live the experience of Paraguay, they're mostly English people. If people come from Europe or the States or Australia, they come to live.
Well, Laura, I know you're very busy now, so you've got to get back to it. But is there anything you want to share with our audience, or maybe you could talk about how they can get in contact with you?
I invite you to check our Instagram page where you can see the details about our agents and some of our properties. Come to the office anytime to grab a coffee and discuss the property and market in real estate in Asuncion, and you can get in touch with one of our 15 brokers. Most of them are English speakers.
Well, what we'll do then, guys, is we will leave all the details for Laura on the description in this video, and we just want to thank you for spending time with us today, Laura. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome anytime. Welcome to come here and grab a cup of coffee and discuss the real estate market in Asuncion.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, Laura.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, guys. I hope you got some good information from Laura today. I certainly learned a few different things. If you'd like to know more about real estate, obviously reach out to Laura. And if you'd like to learn more about residency and Paraguay and moving here and starting your Plan B, please book a call with us today. We have the details in our description. That's it for today, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.